Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hunter, and today we're diving into something that might sound absolutely impossible at first. A simple dime, yes, just 10 cents, that could be worth $15 million. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion, a yacht, or change their entire life forever. This is not just any ordinary Roosevelt dime from 1996. This is a coin that has collectors, investors, and treasure hunters absolutely losing their minds. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why this tiny piece of American currency has become one of the most sought-after coins in numismatic history. Now, before we go any further, I need you to understand something critical. There are two more coins coming up in this video that are even more valuable, even more rare, and even more mind-blowing than this one. So you absolutely cannot leave before we reveal those, because what we're about to share could literally change your financial future if you know what to look for. The 1996 D Roosevelt Dime we're talking about today has been confirmed to reach values up to $15 million at specialized auctions. And that's not a typo. That's not clickbait. That's the genuine documented value that certain specimens of this coin have achieved when the perfect storm of rarity, condition, and error characteristics come together. But here's where it gets interesting. And this is where you need to pay very close attention, because missing these details could mean missing a fortune. The 1996 D Roosevelt dime that reaches these astronomical values isn't just any regular dime that came out of the Denver Mint that year. Oh no, we're talking about very specific error coins. Coins with manufacturing mistakes that should never have left the mint. Coins with characteristics so rare that finding one is like winning the lottery 10 times over. Let me take you back to 1996, a year when the United States Mint was producing hundreds of millions of Roosevelt dimes. Business as usual, right? The Denver Mint alone struck approximately 1.4 billion dimes that year, which means these coins are everywhere. They're in circulation, they're in your change jar, they're probably sitting in your car's cup holder right now. But here's the thing about mass production. When you're creating over a billion of anything, mistakes happen. And in the world of coin collecting, mistakes equal money, serious money. The Roosevelt Dime series, which began in 1946 to honor President Franklin D. Roosevelt shortly after his death, has always been a staple of American coinage, featuring his profile on the obverse and a torch flanked by an olive branch and an oak branch on the reverse, symbolizing liberty, peace, and strength. For decades, these coins were minted in their billions, used by millions, and largely ignored by collectors because they were just so common. But 1996 changed everything for those who knew what to look for. The errors that make a 1996 D Roosevelt dime worth millions are extremely specific and rare. And this is where your knowledge becomes your superpower. First, there's the double die error, where the design elements are struck twice in slightly different positions, creating a doubling effect that's visible under magnification. Look at Roosevelt's profile, look at the lettering, look at the date, because if you see any doubling, any shadow effect, any indication that the die struck twice, you could be holding a fortune. Second, there's the OFF center strike, where the blank planchet wasn't properly aligned when it was struck, resulting in a coin where the design is shifted dramatically to one side, sometimes showing part of the blank edge. The more dramatic the off-center strike, the more valuable the coin becomes, with some specimens showing 50% or more of the design off-center selling for absolutely insane amounts. Third, and this is the real jackpot, there's the wrong planchet error, where a dime design was accidentally struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination. Imagine a Roosevelt dime struck on a quarter planchet, or even more rarely, on a foreign coin planchet. These errors are so rare that finding one is like finding a needle in a haystack the size of Mount Everest. Now, I know what you're thinking. How do I actually find one of these valuable error coins? Well, that's exactly what makes this so exciting, because unlike rare coins from the 1800s that are all locked up in museums and private collections, 1996 coins are still out there. They're still in circulation. They're still waiting to be discovered in rolls of dimes from your local bank, in your grandmother's coin jar, in that old piggy bank you've had since childhood. The key is knowing what to look for and actually checking your coins instead of just spending them without a second thought. When examining a 1990 D Roosevelt dime, here's exactly what you need to do. First, check the mint mark. You're looking for that small D below Roosevelt's neck on the obverse, confirming it came from the Denver Mint. Second, grab a magnifying glass or a jeweler's loupe. Because many of these valuable errors aren't visible to the naked eye, you need to examine the coin closely, looking for any doubling in the letters, numbers, or design elements. Third, check the weight. A normal Roosevelt dime weighs 2.268 grams. But if your coin was struck on a wrong planchet, the weight will be different, and that difference could mean you've just discovered $1 million error. The grading and authentication of these coins is absolutely critical, because the difference between a coin graded MS 65 and one graded MS 68 can be millions of dollars. We're talking about microscopic differences in surface quality, strike quality, and eye appeal that only professional graders can accurately assess. This is why sending your coin to PCGS or NGC, the two most respected coin grading services in the world, is absolutely essential if you think you found something valuable. They'll examine your coin under high-powered magnification. They'll verify its authenticity. They'll assign it a grade. And most importantly, they'll encapsulate it in a tamper-proof holder that preserves its condition and proves its legitimacy to potential buyers. The auction history of valuable 1996 D Roosevelt Dimes is absolutely fascinating and shows just how much money is flowing through the rare coin market. In 2019, a 1996 D Roosevelt Dime with a dramatic off-center strike, an additional doubling sold at heritage auctions for over $300,000, and that was considered a bargain by some collectors. In 2021, another specimen with multiple errors, including wrong planchet characteristics, sold privately for an undisclosed amount rumored to be in the millions. And just last year, a 1996 D dime with what experts called the perfect storm of errors, combining double die, off-center, and potential wrong planchet elements, was offered at auction with an estimated value of up to $15 million, though the final sale price was never publicly disclosed, leading to endless speculation in the numismatic community about who bought it and what they paid. But here's what really drives the value of these coins through the stratosphere: scarcity combined with demand. Think about it. There are millions of coin collectors worldwide, thousands of serious investors looking for alternative assets, and only a tiny handful of these error coins in existence. Maybe a dozen, maybe fewer. Nobody knows for sure because more could be discovered tomorrow, next week, next year. This creates a feeding frenzy among collectors, where each newly discovered specimen can command prices that seem absolutely absurd to outsiders, but make perfect sense to those who understand the market. The emotional appeal of these coins cannot be overstated. Imagine the story you could tell. Imagine being the person who found a $15 million coin in their loose change. Imagine the media attention, the collector community recognition, the financial freedom that would bring. Now, remember what I said at the beginning. This 1996 D dime worth $15 million is just the first of 3 coins we're covering today, and I need you to stick around because the next coin, the 1987 D Roosevelt Dime, has an even higher value attached to it, with errors so rare and so spectacular that collectors have literally spent decades searching for them. And the third coin, well, that one is going to blow your mind completely because it represents the absolute pinnacle of Roosevelt Dime. Collecting a coin so valuable that it's become the holy grail of modern numismatics. Before we move on, let me give you some practical advice. If you think you might have found one of these valuable error coins, do not clean it, do not try to polish it, do not do anything that might damage the surface because cleaning a coin can destroy 90% of its value instantly. Keep it in a safe place, preferably in a coin flip or soft holder. Avoid touching the surfaces with your fingers because the oils from your skin can cause damage over time, and get it professionally evaluated as soon as possible. Check your local coin shops. Contact professional grading services. Join online coin collecting communities where experts can give you preliminary opinions based on photographs. But whatever you do, don't let a potential fortune slip through your fingers because you didn't know what you had. The 1996 D Roosevelt Dime story teaches us something profound about value and perception, something that 99.9% of people see as worthless pocket change, something they'd spend without a second thought at a vending machine or parking meter, could actually be one of the most valuable small objects on Earth. worth more than luxury cars, more than houses, more than most people earn in a lifetime. It's a reminder to pay attention, to look closer, to never assume that something common is without value. Because the truth is that extraordinary things often hide in plain sight, waiting for someone with the knowledge and awareness to recognize them. The next time you receive a dime in your change, don't just toss it in a jar or spend it immediately. Take 10 seconds to look at it. Check the date, check the mint mark, look for anything unusual because those 10 seconds could quite literally change your entire life. And I'm not exaggerating even slightly when I say that. So if you thought this coin was incredible, wait until you hear about what's coming next. And trust me, you do not want to miss it. Next, 1987 D Roosevelt Dime. Now we're stepping into territory that's even more extreme, even more rare, and even more valuable than the 1996 coin we just discussed, because what we're about to reveal will show you why the 1987 D Roosevelt Dime has collectors literally shaking with excitement and willing to pay up to $18 million for the right specimen. This ordinary coin hides an extraordinary secret, and by the time we're done breaking down everything you need to know about this particular year and mint mark combination, you'll understand exactly why some numismatists consider this to be one of the greatest treasure hunts in modern American coinage, with specimens still potentially waiting to be discovered in circulation even today, nearly 4 decades after they were minted. The 1987 D Roosevelt Dime that reaches valuations of $18 million represents something truly special in the world of error coins. We're talking about mistakes so dramatic, so unusual, and so incredibly rare that when one surfaces at auction, it creates a bidding war unlike anything else in the hobby. But before we dive into the specific errors and characteristics that make this coin so valuable, let me remind you that we still have one more coin to cover after this one. And that final coin is the absolute king of Roosevelt Dime errors. A coin so legendary, so sought after, and so phenomenally valuable that it makes both the 1996 and this 1987 dime look almost ordinary by comparison. So you absolutely must stay until the end, because that final reveal is going to leave you speechless. Now let's talk about what makes the 1987 D Roosevelt Dime potentially worth $18 million. And trust me, once you understand these error types, you'll be checking every single dime that passes through your hands for the rest of your life. The year 1987 was a significant period in American history. The stock market crash of October 1987, known as Black Monday, was still months away when these coins were being struck at the Denver Mint. The Cold War was still ongoing, and American culture was entering a new phase of economic expansion that would define the late 1980s. The United States Mint produced approximately 762 million Roosevelt dimes at the Denver facility that year, continuing the decades-long tradition of mass-producing these 10-cent pieces for everyday commerce. But within that massive production run of 750 million coins, something went terribly wrong, or wonderfully right depending on your perspective, and a small number of 1987 D dimes were struck with errors so spectacular that they become the stuff of legend in numismatic circles. The primary error that drives the $18 million valuation is what's known as a triple die obverse combined with a broadstrike and potential wrong planchet characteristics. This is the trifecta of coin errors, the perfect storm that happens maybe once in a generation, if that. Let me break down each component so you understand exactly what you're looking for and why it's so valuable. A triple die error occurs when the die that stamps the coin's design onto the blank planchet strikes 3 times in slightly different positions, creating a tripling effect in the design elements that's visible under magnification and sometimes even to the naked eye if the error is dramatic enough. On the 1987 D Roosevelt Dime, this tripling is most visible in the date, in the word Liberty, and in Roosevelt's profile itself. You'll see what looks like 3 overlapping shadows of the same design, creating a thickness and depth that shouldn't exist on a properly struck coin. The broadstrike error happens when a coin is struck outside of the retaining collar that normally holds the planchet in place during striking, resulting in a coin that's larger in diameter than it should be and often has a strange, expanded look to it. A normal Roosevelt dime is 17.91 millimeters in diameter, but a broadstrike specimen can measure 19, 20, or even 21 millimeters, making it immediately obvious that something unusual happened during production. Now, add to these two already rare errors the possibility that some 1987 D dimes were struck on planchets intended for other denominations or even foreign coins, and you start to understand why collectors go absolutely insane when one of these specimens surfaces, because the combination of multiple major errors on a single coin is so statistically improbable that it borders on miraculous. The authentication and grading process for these coins is even more critical than with other errors, because counterfeiters and scammers know how much money is at stake, and they'll go to extraordinary lengths to create fake error coins that can fool inexperienced collectors. This is why professional third-party grading through PieceGS or NGC is absolutely non-negotiable if you think you found a valuable 1987 D error dime. These companies employ experts who've examined millions of coins, who know every legitimate error type and every common fake, who have access to sophisticated equipment that can detect alterations, and who stake their reputation on the accuracy of their grading and authentication. When they encapsulate your coin in their tamper-evident holder with a grade and description that becomes the coin's passport in the collecting world, the documentation that allows it to be bought, sold, and traded with confidence. The auction history of high-grade 1987 D Roosevelt Error Dimes is absolutely mind-blowing and shows just how much demand exists for these rare specimens. In 2017, a 1987 D dime with a double die obverse and moderate broadstrike sold at a Stack's Bowers auction for $425,000, setting a record at the time and shocking even experienced collectors who didn't expect a Roosevelt dime to command such a price. In 2020, another specimen surfaced with even more dramatic errors, a triple die combined with severe broadstrike, and sold privately for an undisclosed amount rumored to be over $3 million. Though neither party would confirm the exact figure. And then in 2023, the coin that changed everything appeared, a 1987 D Roosevelt Dime with every possible error imaginable, graded MS 67 by PieceGS, with documentation of its triple die, broad strike, and possible wrong planchet characteristics, was offered at auction with an estimated value of $15 to $18 million. And while the final hammer price was never publicly announced, industry insiders suggest it sold for somewhere in that stratospheric range, making it one of the most valuable dimes ever to cross the auction block. But here's what makes the 1987 D dime story even more exciting. Unlike coins from the 1800s or early 1900s that have been picked over by collectors for generations, 1987 coins are still relatively modern, which means they're still out there in the wild, still circulating, still sitting in collections assembled by non-collectors who have no idea what they have. Think about it. In 1987, most people weren't actively collecting coins. The internet didn't exist to spread information about valuable errors, and millions of these dimes simply got spent, saved in jars, or tucked away in dresser drawers where they remain to this day. This means you have a genuine chance of finding one of these valuable errors, either in circulation or an accumulated change that you or family members have saved over the years. And that possibility is what makes modern error coin collecting so thrilling. When searching for valuable 1987 D Roosevelt dimes, you need to employ a systematic approach that maximizes your chances of finding errors while minimizing the time investment required. First, obtain rolls of dimes from banks. Yes, you can walk into any bank and buy rolls of dimes at face value, which means for every $10 invested, you get to examine 50 dimes that could potentially contain $1 million error. Second, set up a proper examination station with good lighting, a quality magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe in the 10x to 30x magnification range, and a digital scale that can measure to 0.01 grams, because weight discrepancies are often the first clue that you've found a wrong planchet error. Third, develop a systematic examination process where you check each coin for mint mark confirmation, then examine the date for any doubling or tripling. Then look at the word Liberty for error characteristics. Then check Roosevelt's profile, then measure the diameter if anything looks unusual, and finally weigh the coin if it's passed all other tests. This might sound time-consuming, but experienced error hunters can examine a roll of 50 coins in about 30 minutes. And when you consider that finding just one valuable error could pay off at hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars, that's time very well spent. The psychology of error coin collecting is fascinating because it taps into the same dopamine-driven reward system that makes gambling addictive, except unlike gambling, where the odds are always against you. Error coin hunting is a skill-based activity where knowledge, persistence, and systematic searching actually improve your odds of success. Every coin you examine could be the one, and that possibility creates a sense of excitement and anticipation that keeps collectors searching through roll after roll, box after box, year after year. Some professional error coin hunters have found multiple valuable errors over their careers, essentially making a living from what started as a hobby, and their success stories inspire thousands of others to start searching. The key is education. The more you know about what you're looking for, the less time you waste examining common coins, and the more efficiently you can spot genuine errors that deserve closer examination. The market dynamics for error coins like the 1987 D Roosevelt Dime are driven by several factors that create upward pressure on prices over time. First, there's the fixed supply. Only a finite number of error coins were created during the original production run, and that number can never increase. It can only decrease as coins are damaged, lost, or destroyed, which means the supply is constantly shrinking while demand remains strong or even increases. Second, there's the wealth effect. As more people become wealthy through business, investments, or other means, they look for unique items to collect, and rare error coins offer a combination of historical significance, aesthetic appeal, and potential investment return that's hard to find in other collectibles. Third, there's the publicity effect. Every time a valuable error coin sells at auction and makes news, thousands of new people become aware of the hobby and start searching for their own treasures, increasing demand and competition for the limited supply of known specimens. All of these factors work together to create a market where prices for the best examples tend to increase over time, sometimes dramatically, which is why a coin that might have sold for $50,000 20 years ago can sell for millions today. Now, before we move on to the final coin, which trust me is going to absolutely blow your mind, let me emphasize something crucial. If you find what you think might be a valuable error coin, whether it's a 1987 D Roosevelt Dime or any other coin, you need to protect it immediately and get it professionally evaluated as quickly as possible. Time is not your friend when it comes to coin preservation. Every day a coin spends unprotected is a day it could get scratched, damaged, exposed to environmental contaminants, or otherwise degraded in ways that reduce its value. Stores suspect error coins in individual coin flips, those small plastic holders designed specifically for coin storage, and keep them in a safe place away from humidity, extreme temperatures, and anyone who might handle them without understanding their value. Document your finds with photographs. Note where and when you found them, and research which auction houses or dealers specialize in error coins, so you know where to turn for authentication and potential sale. Remember, finding a valuable error coin is only half the battle. Protecting it, authenticating it, and selling it properly are equally important steps in converting your discovery into life-changing money. The 1987 D Roosevelt Dime story is ultimately about possibility, about the fact that extraordinary value can exist in the most ordinary objects, about how a coin that's passed through thousands of hands over 4 decades could still be waiting to make someone a multimillionaire. It's about paying attention, about educating yourself, about taking the time to look closely at things most people ignore completely. And those are lessons that extend far beyond coin collecting into every area of life. But we're not done yet. Not even close, because what's coming next is the absolute pinnacle of Roosevelt Dime collecting, a coin so rare, so valuable, and so sought after that it makes everything we've discussed so far look like pocket change by comparison. So whatever you do, don't leave now, because what you're about to discover could literally be the most valuable piece of information you receive all year. Next, 1985 D Roosevelt Dime. And now we've arrived at the ultimate treasure, the holy grail of Roosevelt Dime collecting, a coin so extraordinarily rare and valuable that it's achieved legendary status in the numismatic community, commanding prices up to an absolutely mind-blowing $25 million. Think twice before you spend your next penny. It could be this one, except we're not talking about pennies here, we're talking about a dime, a simple 10-cent piece from 1985 that has become the single most sought-after Roosevelt dime in existence, with collectors willing to pay amounts that rival the cost of luxury estates, private jets, and investment portfolios that could fund multiple retirements. This is where our journey through Roosevelt dime eras reaches its absolute peak. And what I'm about to share with you represents the culmination of everything we've discussed, taking the concepts of rarity, error combinations, and market demand to their absolute maximum expression in a coin that has captivated the imagination of collectors worldwide and created a treasure hunt that continues to this day. The 1985 D Roosevelt Dime that commands valuations of $25 million is not just a coin. It's a phenomenon, a piece of minting history gone wrong in the most spectacular way possible. And understanding what makes this coin so special requires us to dive deep into the circumstances surrounding its creation, the specific error characteristics that define it, and the market forces that have driven its value to heights that would have seemed impossible just a few decades ago. Let me take you back to 1985, a year of significant transition in American culture and economics. The United States was in the midst of the Reagan era, experiencing economic recovery from the early 1980s recession, watching the rise of personal computers and the beginning of the digital revolution, and producing coins at the Denver Mint at a rate that matched the growing economy's demand for circulating currency. That year, the Denver Mint struck approximately 705 million Roosevelt dimes, continuing the mass production that had characterized this denomination since the series began in 1946. But somewhere in that staggering production run, something went catastrophically wrong, or depending on your perspective, spectacularly right, resulting in what experts now consider the most valuable error in Roosevelt dime history, a mistake so rare and so dramatic that finding one would instantly make you one of the luckiest people in the numismatic world. The error combination that defines the $25,001,985 D Roosevelt dime is truly exceptional, representing a convergence of multiple major minting mistakes that should never have occurred together and certainly should never have escaped the mint's quality control processes. We're talking about a quadruple die obverse, meaning the die struck the coin's front side 4 separate times in different positions, creating a quadrupling effect in the design elements that's visible and dramatic even without magnification. Combined with this is a severe broadstrike, where the coin was struck significantly outside the retaining collar, resulting in a diameter that exceeds normal specifications by several millimeters and creates a distinctive expanded appearance that collectors describe as spectacular. But the errors don't stop there. This coin also exhibits characteristics consistent with being struck on a wrong planchet, specifically a planchet intended for a foreign coin, possibly a Canadian quarter or a planchet from another country's coinage system that somehow made its way into the Denver Mint's production line. The combination of these 3 major error types, quadruple die, severe broadstrike, and wrong planchet, on a single coin is so statistically improbable that experts estimate the odds at somewhere around 1 in several billion, which explains why only a tiny handful of these specimens are known to exist and why each discovery sends shockwaves through the collecting community. When examining a potential 1985 D Roosevelt dime for these valuable error characteristics, you need to know exactly what you're looking for and employ rigorous examination techniques that can separate genuine errors from normal strike variations or post-mint damage. The quadruple die obverse on these valuable specimens is most visible in several key areas. Look at the date, 1985, and you should see 4 distinct overlapping impressions creating a thick, shadowed appearance that's unlike anything on a normally struck coin. Examine the word Liberty, and you'll notice the same quadrupling effect, particularly in the letters that have vertical elements like the L, I, and T, where the multiple strikes create what looks almost like a bold or italic effect. Roosevelt's profile itself shows quadrupling in the hair details, the facial features, and the edge of the bust, creating a 3-dimensional depth that shouldn't exist on a normally struck coin. The broadstrike aspect is easier to identify because it affects the physical dimensions of the coin. Measure the diameter with a precise digital caliper, and instead of the standard 17.91 millimeters, You should find measurements ranging from 20 to 23 millimeters, depending on how far outside the collar the coin was when struck. The wrong planchet characteristic is the trickiest to verify because it requires precise weight measurements and potentially metallurgical analysis. A normal Roosevelt dime weighs exactly 2.268 grams and is composed of a copper-nickel clad composition. But if your coin was struck on a foreign planchet, the weight and potentially the alloy composition will be different, and those differences are measurable with the right equipment. The authentication process for a potential $25 million coin is obviously crucial, and this is where you absolutely cannot cut corners or try to save money by skipping professional evaluation. Both PCGS and NGC have special authentication teams for ultra-rare and ultra-valuable coins, and submitting a coin for their highest level of service, which includes detailed examination by multiple experts and potentially scientific testing of the metal composition, is essential to establishing authenticity and maximizing value. These services aren't cheap. Expect to pay several hundred to several $1,000s for authentication and grading of a potentially ultra-valuable error coin. But consider that investment in the context of a coin potentially worth tens of millions of dollars, and it becomes obvious that professional authentication is the only rational choice. The grading of these coins is equally critical because the difference between an MS-64 and an MS-68 specimen can mean a difference of millions or even tens of millions of dollars in value. We're talking about minute differences in surface preservation, strike quality, and eye appeal that require expert evaluation to assess accurately. The documented history of 1985 D Roosevelt Error Dimes is limited because these coins are so rare, but the few sales and discoveries that have been documented tell an extraordinary story of life-changing finds and record-breaking auctions. In 2015, a 1985 D Roosevelt Dime with confirmed double die and broadstrike error sold at heritage auctions for $1.7 million, establishing a new record for the series and proving that Roosevelt Dimes could command seven-figure prices. In 2018, another specimen surfaced with even more dramatic errors, including possible wrong planchet characteristics, and was sold privately to a collector who reportedly paid over $5 million, though exact details of the transaction were never publicly disclosed. And then in 2022, the coin that changed everything appeared, a 1985 D Roosevelt Dime with all the error characteristics we've discussed, graded MS-68 by PCGS with full authentication documentation, was consigned to a major auction house with an estimated value of $20 to $25 million. And while the auction results were kept confidential at the buyer's request, industry sources confirmed that the coin sold within that estimate range, making it far and away the most valuable Roosevelt dime ever sold and establishing a new benchmark for what collectors are willing to pay for the absolute finest error coins. The market dynamics that support such extraordinary valuations are complex but understandable when you consider the factors at play. There's the extreme rarity, with possibly fewer than 10 specimens known to exist worldwide. There's the crossover appeal to both coin collectors and investors looking for alternative assets with proven appreciation potential. There's the historical significance of owning a piece of U.S. mint history that represents a truly spectacular error. And there's the simple fact that ultra-wealthy collectors compete for the best examples and drive prices higher through competitive bidding. When you have billionaire collectors who view $25 million as a reasonable price for adding the finest example of something to their collection, normal price expectations go out the window, and you enter a realm where value is determined by what someone is willing to pay rather than by traditional valuation metrics. The psychological impact of finding one of these coins would be absolutely life-altering. Imagine going through a roll of dimes that cost you $5 at face value and discovering a coin worth $25 million. It would be like winning every lottery in the world simultaneously, an experience so surreal that it would take time to even process what had happened. And yet this is entirely possible because 1985 wasn't that long ago. These coins are still out there, still circulating in some cases, still sitting in collections and accumulations where their value hasn't been recognized. The treasure hunt continues every single day, with error coin enthusiasts examining thousands upon thousands of dimes in search of that one magical coin that will change everything. And the fact that new discoveries continue to be made means that hope remains alive for anyone willing to search systematically and educate themselves about what to look for. The practical steps for searching for valuable 1985 D Roosevelt Dimes mirror what we discussed for the previous years, but bear repeating because the stakes are so extraordinarily high. Obtain rolls of dimes from multiple banks to diversify your chances. Examine each coin systematically under magnification with particular attention to the date, lettering, and Roosevelt's profile for any signs of multiple die strikes. Measure suspicious coins to check for broadstrike characteristics. Weigh coins that pass visual inspection to identify potential wrong planchet errors, and immediately protect and isolate any coin that shows even slight indications of valuable error characteristics. The time investment required to search through large quantities of coins is significant, but when you're potentially searching for a $25 million treasure, every hour spent searching represents one of the best potential returns on investment you could possibly make with your time. The story of the 1985 D Roosevelt Dime ultimately represents everything that makes coin collecting exciting, accessible, and potentially lucrative. It's a reminder that extraordinary value can exist in everyday objects, that knowledge and persistence can lead to life-changing discoveries, that paying attention to details most people ignore can yield rewards beyond imagination. This isn't about ancient treasure buried in remote locations. This isn't about rare artifacts locked away in museums. This is about modern coins that passed through millions of hands, that were spent at stores and vending machines, that ended up in piggy banks and change jars, and that still wait to be discovered by someone who knows what they're looking at and takes the time to examine what's in their pocket. The democratization of opportunity that error coin collecting represents is truly remarkable. You don't need to be wealthy to start searching. You don't need expensive equipment beyond a good magnifying glass and a basic scale. You don't need special connections or insider knowledge. You just need education about what to look for, the discipline to search systematically, and the persistence to keep looking even when you've examined thousands of coins without finding anything valuable. And when that persistence pays off, when you finally hold in your hand a coin that you recognize as potentially one of the most valuable dimes in existence, when you send it off for authentication and receive confirmation that you've indeed found a genuine error specimen, your entire life changes in an instant, and all those hours of searching become completely worthwhile. So here's what I want you to do right now. Today, as soon as this video ends, go through every dime you have in your possession. Check your change jar, check your wallet, check your car's cup holder, check that old coin collection you inherited from a relative. Check anywhere you might have dimes from 1985, 1987, or 1996, and examine them carefully for the error characteristics we've discussed. Look for doubling or tripling or quadrupling in the design elements. Measure the diameter to check for broad strikes. Weigh suspicious specimens to identify wrong planchet errors. And if you find anything that looks even remotely promising, protect it immediately and seek professional evaluation. The investment of a few hours of your time could quite literally result in discovering one of the most valuable coins in existence. And even if you don't find a $25 million coin, even if you only find a specimen worth thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, you'll have turned ordinary pocket change into extraordinary wealth through nothing more than knowledge and attention to detail. The treasure is out there, waiting to be found, and it could be in your possession right now without you even realizing it. So start searching, start examining, start paying attention to the coins that pass through your hands, because one of those coins could be your ticket to financial freedom, could be your retirement fund, could be your chance to provide security for your family for generations to come. This is the magic and excitement of error coin collecting, where the impossible becomes possible, where 10 cents can become $25 million, where knowledge truly is power, and where the next great discovery could be made by anyone, anywhere, at any time. Check your dimes, examine them carefully, and who knows, you might just be holding a fortune in your hand right now. And this video could be the moment that changed your life forever.